everybody. So this is just going to be another review of how to write a TDA paragraph rather than a TDA essay, which is something you might be more used to. This is exactly what we did in class. So if you were absent or you weren't paying attention or you would just like another review before you write your TDA paragraph that's in no red ink, then go ahead and keep watching and I'm going to show you exactly how we do it. So you'll notice here that this is the monkey's paw TDA. You guys already did this one a few months ago, so that's why I wanted to come back to it and actually show you how we would do this process with something that you're familiar with. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to break down our prompt. So I already made it nice and big for you, but we're just going to go ahead and look through this together. So we're going to read the following excerpt from the monkey's paw, which is over here, and we're going to analyze, which is a key word. We're going to analyze how the author creates suspense through setting, dialogue, point of view, foreshadowing, and or word choice. Okay, and we're going to use evidence from the text to support our responses. So we are going to be looking for, quite simply, how the author is creating suspense. So I'm going to use one of my colorful pens here to help mark that for me. Okay, so I'm looking for how the author creates suspense, and we're looking at these specific things they've given us: setting, dialogue, point of view, foreshadowing, and or word choice. So we're going to have to keep those in the forefront of our minds when we're going and we're looking through here to see if any of these are actually here. So we're going to use process of elimination, and we're going to start with setting. We're going to look and see if it tells us anything about setting in this excerpt. So I'm going to read this aloud. You can follow along with me. "Not likely," said Herbert with pretended horror. "Why, we're going to be rich and famous and happy." Smiling, he said, "Wish to be king, father, to begin with. Then mother can't complain all the time." He ran quickly around the table, chased by the laughing Mrs. White, armed with a piece of cloth. Mr. White took the paw from his pocket and eyed it doubtfully. "I don't know what to wish for, and that's a fact," he said slowly. "It seems to me I've got all I want." "If you'd only paid off the house, you'd be quite happy, wouldn't you?" said Herbert, with his hand on his shoulder. "Well, wish for £200 then. That'll just do it." His father, smiling with an embarrassed look for his foolishness in believing the soldier's story, held up the talisman. Herbert, with a serious face, spoiled only by a quick smile to his mother, sat down at the piano and struck a few grand chords. "I wish for £200, said the man clearly. A fine crash from the piano greeted his words, broken by a frightened cry from the old man. His wife and son ran toward him. "It moved," he cried, with a look of horror at the object that lay on the floor. "As I wished, it twisted in my hand like a snake." "Well, I don't see the money," said his son, as he picked it up and placed it on the table, "and I bet I never shall." "It must have been your imagination, dear," said his wife, regarding him worriedly. He shook his head. "Never mind, though. There's no harm done, but it gave me a shock all the same." Okay, so as we looked through there, I did not see anywhere where it really told us about our setting. And remember, our setting is our time and place. So we can see that they're running around a table, but that's about all we have. So we know that setting is not even an option here. So I'm going to take my red pen and cross through that. So we know that we're not even looking for setting. Okay. The next thing that we can look for suspense is dialogue. Now, I notice there's quite a bit of conversation happening. So I think it's a fair bet that dialogue is probably one of our choices here. Point of view. So we talked about a couple different types of point of view. This one is written in third person limited. The way we know that is first person is told with I, we, my, things like that. It's told from somebody's point of view inside. That's not the case here. This is done from an outside narrator, and we know that they don't seem to know everything about this paw. Even the narrator doesn't. So this makes it limited, not omniscient. So our narrator doesn't know anything more than what we do, and we only know what the characters know. So this is definitely one of ours here. We discussed with our suspense doodle notes that when having a limited point of view can really give you an edge in your suspense in your stories. Okay, so we know that dialogue's a good idea, and we know that suspense is a good idea. So let me grab a highlighter real quick. And we're just going to mark those to remind us, like, yeah, this one's good, and we think that point of view is good. Let's check on foreshadowing. Now, we talked about this in class, but there's something that Herbert says at the very end here that is definitely foreshadowing. Because we've read the rest of the story, we know that Herbert never ends up actually seeing the money. So he says this here, well, I don't see the money, as he placed the paw on the table, and I bet I never shall. We know that he dies shortly after this, and the money that the family does receive is compensation for his death. So we know that this is definitely some foreshadowing. There's another small piece that I can see here too at the very end where Mr. White is talking. He shook his head. Never mind though, there's no harm done, but it gave me a shock all the same. Because we've read this story, we know that the quote, there's no harm done, is not true. And it's actually pretty ironic. So if you wanted to use this one as well, I could definitely see that, but I think this is going to be our strongest choice here. We do have some going on up here. We were talking about the omens yesterday or earlier this week in class. Okay, so omens, things that tell us that something bad is coming. A lot of the times we think about those as crows or other things like that, nasty animals like roaches. Sometimes mice will appear. Other times you'll see them in like the spooky movies, like we were talking about, how like sometimes in like especially like with ghosts and demons kind of movies, sometimes like a cross on the wall will like flip upside down, and then we know that something bad is in the house. It's an omen. So we've got one present here as well. When we're talking about the paw, as he wished, it twisted in my hand like a snake. A lot of people, when we think about snakes, it's not in a positive mindset. If you call someone a snake, it's not a compliment. Snakes are slippery, and they often, if you look at things even from like the Old Testament or other stories and things like that, snakes pop up over and over again as deceivers, as things that lie, as things that trick us. So with the paw taking that on and becoming like a snake, we can have some foreshadowing and tell us this paw is not good news. This paw, this magical paw, is probably a deceiver. It's probably some kind of trick, and you're not going to get what you think you will by wishing with it. So this is definitely an omen, and that counts as foreshadowing. So that is definitely there. So I'm going to go ahead and just highlight that one. As far as word choice goes, it doesn't look like anything other than what we had just spoken about with the snake, calling it a snake. I would consider that word choice as well. But because it's an omen, I think it fits better with foreshadowing. So that's what we're going to go with. So we are saying that setting isn't a thing that the author used to create suspense, and word choice is not really a thing either. So I'm going to go ahead and cross that one as well, so we'll remember what we're putting. Okay, so now I've got my piece of paper over here, which is what I'm going to use to break down our prompt and give it to myself up here to be my introduction statement. Remember, that was one of the things that you need for your TDA paragraph. So you're not doing an introduction paragraph, it's just going to be a thesis statement is really what it is. Okay, so the way we do this is we take our prompt as it is like a question, and we flip it to turn it into a statement. So this one's like, how does the author create suspense using these things? We've chosen the things that they use. So we're going to say for our statement, the author of The Monkey's Paw creates suspense by, and then we're going to list the things that we found that it used. So the author of the monkey's paw blah, is creating suspense by using dialogue, the point of view, we're going to say the type of point of view, and foreshadowing. Foreshadowing future events. That sounds good. Okay, so that would be all I would use for my introduction statement. The author of The Monkey's Paw creates suspense by using dialogue, the type of point of view, and foreshadowing future events. Now, you could make this more specific, and that's actually something that I'm thinking I'm going to do here. So instead of just saying the type of point of view, we're going to say by using dialogue, comma, third person limited. Third person limited point of view and foreshadowing future events. I think that sounds a little bit better. It's a little more clear. Okay, now our prompt also tells us that we need to use evidence from the text to support our response. So we've already found it when we were going through there together. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly mark it. I'm going to use 3 different highlighter colors just to help us differentiate between dialogue, point of view, and foreshadowing. We'll start with dialogue, and I'm just going to highlight one of these, and then I'll do the others a little more speedy. Okay, so with our dialogue, we can say that judging by this conversation that they're having this entire time, the family doesn't really believe in the power of the paw yet, and we can use that to our advantage here with our explanation. So we can see that even from the beginning, Herbert's joking with his dad, telling him, we're going to be rich and famous and happy. Wish to be a king, Dad. Okay? That's not something you would ask for if you really got 3 wishes. Okay? And then later, after they wish on the paw, you can see that I don't see the money kind of situation. We'll come back to that in a minute, but we can kind of sum up from their conversation. It must have been your imagination. Nothing really happened here. No harm done. Gave me a shock all the same. So they don't really believe. So we're going to use this one. I think is going to be one of our strongest examples of how to prove that they don't believe using their dialogue. I changed point of view to pink, so that's what I'm going to be using here. And we can tell that this is in third person by just doing a couple of these. Like I see he, we see their names are out here. He said slowly. So we see a whole lot of that and no eyes, no we, nothing that would tell us that it's first person. And that's not something you necessarily need to mark on yours, but it's just letting me know that this is indeed third person. And foreshadowing. So we found those examples over here. So I already circled it, but I'm going to go ahead and highlight it too. The like a snake situation. I don't see the money, and I bet I never shall. Those are our big ones. So those are like the omens things. So I'm going to star that so we remember. So now that we've found our text evidence, we can go ahead and actually start using it. So I went ahead and zoomed in here on the quick thing that I wrote. My handwriting's kind of big. I promise it's not actually that long. So this is how we would go ahead and start a body section of our TDA. So the author uses foreshadowing to create suspense by comparing the paw to a symbolic omen, a snake. Snakes are often portrayed as liars and tricksters throughout history. Mr. White said the paw twisted in his hand like a snake when he wished, letting the readers know that the paw may twist his wish like a deceiving snake. So this would be how you would use your text evidence. So notice that I didn't just put a quote in there and leave it there. You have to tell us, like, how does that quote support you? Okay? So this is what you are going to do for your TDA and any future TDA that you do. When you give us your thesis, your introduction statement, and when you're giving your text evidence, make sure you're telling us what the text evidence means, not just throwing a quote at us. For your TDA about War of the Worlds, I think you're going to find that there's more evidence than you think, just like this. And your TDA will often probably be closer to about 8 sentences or even 9. So don't be surprised if it's a little longer than you think. That's a good thing, okay? The minimum you're aiming for is 5 to 7. So go until you are out of evidence and then edit it a little bit and then submit it.